as an entrepreneur, you're the manager of your own cash flow,
Mhm.
and you have to make sure that you're not just receiving cash flow from one area
Mhm.
or burning from one particular resource. So you have
Mhm.
to make sure that you have at least two or more.
There are other entrepreneurs out there who are listening. They're tuned in, maybe
Hmm.
even right now on Facebook, and they're in their first few years doing business. What's your advice to them? Let's say they're in their second or third year right now. They are struggling a little bit. There are cash flow problems. There are a little bit of problems with their employees. What's
Hmm.
your advice to them?
It's really being able to get your emotions checked, keep your priorities in check,
Mhm.
your mission. So
Mhm.
that's number one. A second advice that I would say is biggest mistake that usually entrepreneurs will get into is that they go all into
Mhm.
one thing. But for me is always make sure that you always have a spare tire. And
Mhm.
my father-in-law would always say that to me as well.
Mhm.
But my version is that, as an entrepreneur, you're the manager of your own cash flow,
Mhm.
and you have to make sure that you're not just receiving cash flow from one area
Mhm.
or burning from one particular resource. So you have
Mhm.
to make sure that you have at least two or more,
Mhm.
because if your venture fails, you have to make sure that you're going to survive.
Yeah.
So in my case, when I was starting Pandora, I was doing some odd jobs,
Mhm.
some side consultancy,
Mhm.
and then at the same time, building another business to
Mhm.
make sure that, if this business fails,
Mhm.
at least I have another one,
Yeah.
or at least both will be able to survive and
Mhm.
thrive for
Yeah.
the matter. So that's what I did. You
Mhm.
have to make sure that you have a spare tire,
Yeah.
because when push comes to shove, if bleep hits the fan,
Yeah.
you don't want to, you don't want to find yourself,
Yeah.
full of remorse,
Yeah.
full of regret, and you'd feel bad about yourself,
Mhm.
making a bad decision,
Mhm.
so and so forth. No, failure is always, I mean, sounds like a cliche, but it's always something that, it's a one step forward.
Yeah.
You learn something how not to do that,
Mhm.
you know so it's just to make a cushion for yourself on a
Mhm.
personal level, that you won't, find yourself in that position, that okay, I'm back to zero.
Yeah.
No, you're always, in that level, that okay, I'm managing my portfolio, I'm
Yeah.
managing my cash flow, and I want to invest in this, and I'm going all into this, but I still have a reserve,
Mhm.
something like that. So
Mhm.
I would always advise to always make sure that you have more than two sources of income. uh, Either that be you're an employed,
Yeah.
you're an employee, so that's one source of income.
Yeah.
Look at it as a business. You're the asset,
Yeah.
and then you're doing your own business. So that
Right.
could be one aspect. Or at the same time, you have two businesses. You're running two businesses.
Yeah.
That could be the same thing.
Yeah.
Or you're doing consulting jobs. So that's
Yeah.
another perspective.
Yeah.
That's how I actually started my route.
Mhm.
And the third advice, on a practical sense, is that don't be too in love with your product.
Mhm.
Let,
Wow.
let, let me quantify that. Okay. uh don't be too much in love with your product, but be in love with your mission.
Mhm.
Because I was somehow, I found myself towards that direction, wherein
Mhm.
I was so focused in, building the best product.
Mhm.
I was so in love with the product. I made something so well,
Mhm.
but I lost touch with the mission. I lost touch with the market,
Yeah.
that it made totally no sense
Mhm.
to the business.
Wow.
I built something so good. It's like saying, I'm not saying that this is what Elon Musk did, but if they make a, let's say, a spaceship for just for doing a certain feat,
Yeah.
if it was just
Going
blank,
to the sun.
going to the
Something
sun
like
or
that.
something like
Yeah.
that, then it made no sense. But it was a great product, but
Yeah.
it made no sense. Then we veered off from the mission.
Yeah.
So for me, it's really understanding that when you create a product, you have to be able to still look yourself in the mirror and say, Am I building this product for the mission?
Mhm.
Or am I doing this because it's just for me to feel good about myself that I built something good?"
Yeah.
So for me is I see a lot of entrepreneurs or somehow people just so in love with their own product, their own baby,
Yeah.
that they were so engrossed
Yeah.
with the idea, that I'm so good, I
Yeah.
built this, that the entire company burned through its
Yeah. Runway.
runway, burned through cash, and
Yeah.
then found themselves in the brink of bankruptcy, and then
Right.
folded.
Yeah.
And you don't want that to happen. So for me is, understand your purpose, go
Mhm.
back to the mission, and see. Because for me back then, just to set an example,
Yeah.
was we were building our first product and I was so in love with it,
Yeah.
but uh we were down almost 1 million. And
Wow.
then for me it was like, okay, we have to accept that this product is not going to sell yet.
Mm.
So we have to make a certain move. We have to
Yeah.
sell a different product first to make the company survive,
Yeah.
because we're in this mission to make a point.
Yeah.
So I had to go out, sell different service, sell a
Yeah.
different type of product,
Yeah.
do odd jobs again for the company, and then raise new
Wow.
cash, and then eventually find ourselves, okay, this is the right time to rebuild the product and see if it fits.
Yeah.
And then by the time it made sense, then came Pandora.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a difficult, difficult mountain to climb. And that's
Yes.
really good stuff for you out there who are going to be starting your own entrepreneurial journey, or who are thinking about it, or who are, as Isaac said, in the middle of the bridge. That's really good advice. Don't get too engrossed in your product. Know that you're going to be sacrificing a lot of things and thrive in chaos. Things are going to be uncertain. You're not going to know what's going to happen.
Amen.
Isaac is in the business of ones and zeros. Either he makes it big or he doesn't. It's a tech company. He was way ahead of his time. And now, thank God, he has been able to merge with a company that just makes a lot of sense in terms of the business need and the close community of customers that they have. Now, with that advice to entrepreneurs, I'm going to ask another thing for them. There are entrepreneurs right now who may be on the same boat. They're like 5, 7, 8 years on the runway,
Mm-hmm.
and they might be making money, they might not, but they have a good offer, or
Mm-hmm.
they have a good merger offer
Mm-hmm.
that they're thinking about. What's
Mm-hmm.
your advice to these kinds of entrepreneurs?
You can look at it two ways: personally and of course objectively, from the perspective of the company. So for me, you have to consider both. It's not looking at two ways, but you have to consider both. Yeah. So first is for the company, what would it entail?
Hmm.
And of course, for the people that you built,
Hmm.
it's really first, of course, if it actually makes sense doing the deal in the first place,
Hmm.
commercially, at the same time, if it aligns to your mission. So
Hmm.
like I said, since I would always go back to my story, our main mission was to make it big and to showcase that, okay, we're able to do this.
Yeah.
And we're proud that our product is now being used by, even though we're now not Pandora Labs,
Yeah.
we're now Bolton. It's being used elsewhere, and we're
Hmm.
happy about that. And for me, it's something that we take pride in.
Yeah.
You know,
How
uh,
many people, by the way, do you know how many people use your software right now?
Not people, but I would say
Hmm.
companies. Probably I would say, um, it's in the numbers of at least 100
100 people, 100
companies.
companies.
Yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah,
huge.
yeah.
That's huge.
At
Congratulations.
least, at least.
It's a blessing.
Yeah.
Anything else about about entrepreneurs who are wanting to merge or get
Oh yeah.
acquired?
From the personal on a personal note, of course, if you're single, of course, then you just have to look into what are your next plans, what are
Yeah.
your goals,
Yeah.
what are your ambitions.
Before signing anything.
Yeah, of course, before signing anything. And of course, like in my case, I was married. Of course, you consult your wife,
Hmm.
because of course, anything with making these decisions, you have to consider her thoughts as well,
Hmm.
because it's both you. The
Yeah.
business is both you and your wife, so
Yeah.
you have to ask her what she thinks about it.
Hmm.
So on a personal note, you have to also be settled with what are the changes that could happen, what
Hmm.
are the upsides, what are the downsides.
Hmm.
You have to be really aware of these things. Would you lose control?
Hmm.
What are you willing to give up? What if you're not majority? What if
Yeah.
you're the minority? What do you have to do?
Hmm.
And of course, for me, while thinking of all of these technical things, both on a personal note and on the company level, is definitely you have to pray about it.
Yeah.
For me, is it was a nice verse that I read in Proverbs. Man can roll the dice, but
Yeah.
it's God who decides the outcome.
Yeah.
So you just have to understand that you ask God if this is the right decision, and then if if He says that it is, then trust God that He'll bring you to where He wants you to be,
Mm-hmm.
and whether whatever that what happens, it's
Mm.
always something good that would come out eventually.
So it's a journey of faith.
It's a journey of faith,
So
technically.
one of the things that I took away from that is, if you're in the middle of an M&A or a merger and acquisition deal,
Hmm.
always first prioritize asking God,
Amen.
right? So we roll the dice. Entrepreneur, the definition came from the French word entreprendre.
Uh-huh.
Entreprendre means someone who takes risks.
Exactly.
So that's us. We roll the dice every day,
Yeah.
and God decides the outcome every day.
Hmm.
So first pray, and then also decide for yourself. Ask your spouse if this is the right thing for you to do,
Hmm.
and consider your people.
Your
Right?
people,
Those are
yeah.
the things that I learned from that.
Yeah, because people, it's really important that in whatever venture that you start in,
Mm-hmm.
that be a small team, a big team, a new project, an ongoing project, you have to make sure that you have the right people,
Mm-hmm.
and you build the trust with them. You build the relationship with them.
So I'm wondering now, how did they react, and how did you break the news to them that, hey, guys, we're getting acquired,
Um,
or we're gonna be merging?
of course, for them was a surprise, and at the same time, some of course it's something that's exciting because it's new,
Mm-hmm.
and for a lot of them, I would say it meant stability.
Yeah.
So that's the good part. But I think in my case, the nice thing about it is because they built a nice and solid relationship with me.
Mm-hmm.
Their concern was, sir, will I be reporting still to you,
Mm-hmm.
because we want you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So as touching it may sound, but for me, that shouldn't be always the case, because
Mm.
you build them to be independent on their own
Yeah.
as well. So I think that was their primary concern. But
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, of course, you have to gear them up and
Yeah.
tell them that this is growth. This is
Yeah.
positive growth. This is not negative.
Yeah.
So eventually they took it in a positive sense,
Mm-hmm.
and of course I will always tell them, this is not just a single person's feat. This is technically a contribution of everybody,
Yeah.
down from the HR down
Yeah.
to the admin.
Yeah.
All of these people contributing to the success of this
Yeah.
company,
Yeah.
to who we are today. So yeah, it's really all of them,
Yeah.
not just me.
And I'm curious, and you may or may not answer this, and I respect that.
Hmm.
So there are people who stayed with you, went with you in the merger.
Hmm.
Did you change their contract? Were they able to lobby for another benefit or salary package with the new employer?
Oh yeah, actually I did that for them.
Wow.
So I went ahead and negotiated a better offer,
Hmm.
a better package,
Yeah.
so above market,
Yeah.
benefits as well,
Hmm.
and all of these things.
Because they're gonna be moving to BGC. That's no joke,
Yeah,
right?
there's no
Yeah.
joke as well. And then of course tenure. So
Yeah.
I had to make sure all of these details that
Yeah.
as,
They're
as
not
I
gonna be laid off.
yeah, because
Yeah.
I myself, I was an employee myself, so I understand where they're coming from.
Right.
So which is also a good experience that I had. So
Hmm.
I went ahead and made sure before I announced these things, I had
Hmm.
it on paper.
Anything new that you're working on right now?
Oh, lots of things, but
I'm sure.
yeah, well, as an entrepreneur, like I said, you always have to make sure that you have the next thing going, or what you're working on.
Mm.
Not in a sense that you have to have a lot of projects, no, but it's more of what you're doing with the the uh, the 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 funds that's given to you.
Yeah.
So it's being a good steward. So
Mm.
eventually I founded a company called Malaya Corp.
Mhm.
So Malaya, so it's very
Mhm.
Filipino,
Mhm.
but at the same time, what it means is freedom.
Mhm.
So it's really freedom from all of these negative things that we have. So but definitely it's not a non-profit organization
Yeah.
with all of these things.
Yeah.
But Malaya Corp right now is I started a company as a holdings company of the family
Mhm,
that I have right now, and with the funds that I've saved up
mhm,
and with the little equity that I have, is to look into companies or businesses that I could actually build as cash cows.
mhm,
Like we had a conversation over dinner, is that okay? Would you go into tech again?
mhm.
And given that I understand the landscape that we have here
Yeah.
in the Philippines or in Asia, it's not the same as how it is in the West. So we don't have VC backing. The
Yeah.
culture is not the same.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do was to be self-sustaining,
Mhm,
in a sense like how Google made it, that they have one cash cow that allowed them to experiment a lot of things.
yeah.
So now that I somehow had a little of residual reserves, is to get into to form new businesses that
Mhm,
could eventually generate me those
mhm.
sustainable income
Yeah.
to fund maybe into tech or
Mhm.
maybe to something else that's more profitable.
Yeah.
So I'm currently into two different industries. So
Mhm,
for the first one is I'm trying to venture into property development.
mhm,
So looking into developing some properties.
mhm,
So there's some projects and opportunities there.
mhm,
So that's what I'm currently focusing on.
mhm.
Most of my time right now.
Yeah.
So that's that. Another thing is in the business of product distribution and product trade.
Mhm,
So we're looking into certain products that we could actually bring,
mhm,
import or export either from here in the Philippines, outside,
mhm,
or in, that would be in synergy with the different businesses that I'm in as well.
mhm, mhm.
So those are the two things.
So for entrepreneurs out there who are looking for funding,
Nah,
no,
I'm
I'm
not a
just
VC
kidding.
yet. I'm not a VC yet.
Yeah, but you're looking into some good companies, tech or non-tech, that are looking for yeah, they're looking for funding. They have equity in stock that they're willing to part with, and you are looking for these good gems,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah,
you want to invest into them, make sure they have good, not just cash flow, but mentorship from you,
mentorship. Yeah,
because you have experience, you've
yeah,
gone through some of the hardships that we've talked about over dinner
exactly.
earlier.
Yeah,
And these are things that are very, very valuable, especially for startup entrepreneurs out there
yeah.
who have big ideas, who are starting for the first time, or maybe you haven't started for, maybe this is your second time and you're still looking for funding. So, with that, how can people reach you?
So I mentioned that I'm not in social media. I'm in social media, but I'm not active. But
Yeah.
you could just probably just DM me in Instagram, because I have
Mm,
a public profile there. So
mm.
just ping me there. It's fine.
It's
Or
at Isaac,
Isaac Sabas. Yeah,
just one whole name,
one whole name. Yeah,
ISAACSABAS.
SABAS. Yeah.
Or via email, what's your email address?
My email address is ice.sabas@gmail.com.
ICE is
ICE.
ICE.
Yeah.
Got it. So ICE.sabas, SABAS, at
Yes. Gmail.com.
gmail.com. So you guys know where to reach Isaac. If you're looking for, you have a great idea, you think it's going to work, you want to discuss it, just reach
Yeah.
out to Isaac from there. Follow him on Instagram, follow him on Facebook. You have your Facebook page,
Yeah, Facebook is the
Twitter,
same. Yeah, Twitter, I'm not updating it. And
not
so
update.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
so
just rotting
it's
there.
just there. Yeah,
All right,
yeah,
guys.
it's
So,
wasting my time.
yeah.
Always thinking about what to say. So never mind.
So, guys, I hope you enjoyed this one. We have one of the very few people who I know here in the Philippines who have gone through an M&A successfully through his first startup, which is Pandora Labs. Isaac, thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you. It's a privilege.
And until next time, guys, keep leading.
Thank you, bro.
Even if you're a fresh graduate, as long as you have the drive, the passion, the willingness to sacrifice and suffer for these things, you will be able to create a business out of it, start a business out of it, and become an entrepreneur. Next question again would be from Patrick Miguel. What are the top 5 skills you would advise a newly graduate to learn to thrive in the future to be successful? First skill, communication. Communication is super important. How you communicate with people, will you be able to engage them? And communication doesn't mean talking. It doesn't mean speaking. It doesn't mean na nagsasalita ka lang on stage or nagta-type ka lang, marunong ka mag-chat, marunong ka mag-formulate ng words. That's not communication. You know how communication starts? By listening. You have to learn the art of listening. I know that you guys know I have the podcast Leadership Stack, and we're on Spotify. We have a lot of episodes already. If you guys are wondering what makes a really good episode, it's when I listen to the people I am interviewing. Most of the time, I have guests, and most of my questions actually stem from them saying something brilliant in their answers, and me taking that answer and formulating another question from that. And hindi mo kaya gawin yon if you don't have the ability to listen well. So great communication is key. One of the key skills for you to be successful in life, not just as an entrepreneur, maybe even as an employee. But you need to learn how to listen first. That's the key to great communication. If you make the other person feel like, oh, this guy really understands me, then that person would be more open to listen to you as well. And great communication happens in between. Knowing the words to say, knowing how to say it, hand gestures, body language, facial expressions, these are all secondary, important, but secondary. First thing you need to do is to listen. And how you show someone you're listening is you look them in the eye, you keep quiet, don't comment, and then you mirror whatever it is that they say. It could be, did you mean? And then you paraphrase it in your own words. That will tell them that you really listen to them. It's difficult for me to list the top 5 skills, no? Ang dami nito, but definitely communication is at the top of my list. Second thing that you need to learn to thrive in the future and to be successful, I think, is sales. Nothing happens until someone sells something. That quote is attributed to Henry Ford. The world doesn't revolve, the world doesn't go round until someone sells something. For example, what have I sold you guys here? I've sold you the idea that if you tune in, you're going to get something out of it. And that's what made you act and finally tune in. If a parent wants their child to eat veggies, the parent has to sell the child that vegetables are good for them. However, they want to make the product good, taste good, nasa sa kanila na yon. If you want to add more seasoning to the vegetable, nasa sa'yo na yon. Or if you want to force the child to do it, but you have to sell it to the child that this is good for you. Why don't you try it out? Nothing happens until someone sells something. And sales is one of the oldest skills in history. It is one of the oldest professions in history, being a salesperson. You cannot be successful if you cannot sell. Even if you're not an entrepreneur, you may be a product person or an inventor, you still have to learn to sell your invention to someone who will invest in it and make it improve and iterate it until it is market ready. Whether you are a businessman, an employee, an inventor, an idealist, you have to learn how to sell. If you don't know how to sell, success will be ever elusive. Mahirap makahanap ng success sa buhay pag di ka marunong magbenta. Maybe the third one would be the ability to accept criticism. In short, humility. It's hard to hear people say bad stuff about you, things that you need to change. That's how it is as human beings. Mahirap talaga eh. But if you keep rejecting that, the chances of you improving is very small. Because the easiest way for you to know your weaknesses and blind spots is usually from how other people see you. Kaya nga siya blind spots eh. Because you don't know. You don't see it. You don't see that this is how I talk. This is how I correct others. This is how I do things. There may be some things that are wrong in that, but you don't see it because you're blind to it. And the easiest and best way to see it is when other people correct you. But if you're not humble enough to accept correction, all you're going to be doing is defending yourself. And it's tough when it becomes a defense party. You have to learn to accept it and make solutions to change. That it will still be your blind spot. It will still be your weakness. So mahirapan ka talagang i-improve yon. It's easier to improve strengths than to improve weaknesses. but you have to still improve that nonetheless, at least to a certain level where it's acceptable to a lot of other people. People who cannot accept correction, what happens to them? They don't get along well with other people because they don't improve. But people who are able to accept correction and improve, those are people who get ahead because they're likable. The fourth skill that you need to be successful in the future is to delay gratification. You have to learn how to delay gratification. You cannot do things now when you want it, when you feel like it. Mahirap yon. The idea of pay now so that you can play later is real. The idea of play now but you will have to pay later is also real. If you keep playing now, and the now is usually when you're younger, when you have more energy, when you can network better, and you have to pay later, what happens is usually you end up poor. Success is very, very hard to find if you're a play now, pay later person. But if you're a pay now, play later person, you put in the grind, the hard work, the hustle because you're younger, you can endure more, you can go the distance more. Then the pay later would be super small na. And the play later would be very easy na for you. You can play a lot because you paid now. Yeah, it's true that you're older when you get to play, but wala ka ng stress. Wala ka ng masyadong iniisip because you paid it now eh. So I'll tell you guys a story. When I was younger and I was in college, I was computing the potential salary that I would get in my first few jobs, probably. I also projected that maybe I'd get promoted in X number of years, would get this much salary with the taxes and everything. Life did not look very great. In fact, it looked bleak. Kasi when I computed it, maybe I'd get to buy my first car at 35. Maybe I'd get to buy my first house at 45. And maybe I would also be able to get married somewhere in my late 30s. Just because I don't have the money to do it. What I did was pay now and play later during that time because my startup years, I would work 16-hour days pretty much non-stop. So medyo napabayaan ko yung sarili ko, no, yung katawan ko during that time. But now, 10 years later, I'm 32. I'm able to achieve a level of success that would only be in my wildest dreams. At 25, I got married. I was able to buy my first car at 23. I was able to buy my first house and lot and pay for it by 31. These things for me are a dream. In fact, for me, it's still surreal. No, hindi ka panipaniwala in Tagalog yung mga na-achieve kong mga bagay. And that's because during that time, I learned how to pay now and play later. Because you have to pay, whatever the case is. Whatever you choose, you'd have to pay. It's either you pay now and play later or play now and pay later. And playing now and paying later is going to ruin your life and you're going to end up poor. The fifth thing for a newly graduate to learn to thrive in the future, to be successful, and you have to let me say this because I'm a man of faith, I'm a born again Christian. I think one of the skills that you need would be to have a daily relationship with God. That is one of the secrets that I always say is right in front of you, and I keep saying it, but people don't follow it. It's mind blowing. But really, that is something that is super necessary for life. There are a lot of promises in the Bible. If you read the book of Proverbs, if you don't know where Proverbs is, nasa gitna yun ng Bible. Katabi siya ng Psalms. Marami doon, it talks about money, success, debt, and talks about personal finance as well. So if you read the Bible, if you learn to have a relationship with God, or even if you just read the Bible, the book of Proverbs, you actually learn a lot of things. And these things will help you to succeed in life. So for me, that is a skill. I would consider it a skill just because not a lot of people do it. Just because not a lot of people invest time in that, they would invest time and money and effort in their personal growth, in their public speaking, in their personal finance management, in their insurance, but they don't invest in their spirit. They don't invest in their soul, which I think is a very real part of us and is something that everyone should invest in. Again, from Cedric, what advice would you give to fresh college graduates or aspiring entrepreneurs with consideration to the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic?